Andy Burnham there. Well, with me now is Deven Ghelani, who worked with the former Work and Pensions Secretary Ian Duncan Smith to create Universal Credit. He's now the Director of Policy and Practice, which advises local authorities on the welfare system. Very good to see you, Mr Ghelani. Well, you heard Andy Burnham there saying he thinks it is a sensible principle to incentivise work, to roll these benefits all together, but it's the implementation that's going wrong. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's good to hear, because fundamentally everyone still agrees with the underlying principle behind universal credit. What it's trying to do is deliver against, really simplify an incredibly complicated benefit system. So you've got 3 different agencies administering a whole range of benefits, each of which have their own rules. Trying to simplify that system, everyone agrees, is a good idea. The fundamental difference between universal credit as a policy idea and how it's being implemented in practice, I think, comes down to one core issue, which is when it was originally conceived, it was considerably more generous than it is currently being implemented. We've had a range of cuts to the welfare system. Universal credit has borne a significant brunt of that. And actually, one of the reasons the government's having so much trouble with it, and fundamentally people on the front line, the organisations we work with, they tell us about the households that are struggling with this, and I think that one of the big drivers of that is that it's not been funded to a sufficient extent.
Well, you're explicit here. I mean, your fingerprints are all over it. You're one of the architects. You're saying there's not enough money going into it. Would you go further then and say, because of that, and because of the experience of so many real people, it should be paused at the very least?
I think the timing of this debate is very timely, because it's coming a month ahead of a budget. So I think it's a good opportunity for the government to think about whether or not it's something for the department to fix from a purely administrative perspective, or whether it's something that the government is going to weigh in together and deliver on to make sure universal credit is a reform that fundamentally feels rewarding and makes work pay. So
do you think issues such as the amount of time people who are being moved on to it have to wait for payments, can that be easily fixed? This 6-week gap, it's meant to mirror the world of work. Well, very few people who work have to wait 6 weeks for a paycheck.
Yeah, I think the government have put themselves in a very difficult position, because, as you've just said, that's difficult to justify. If you moved into work and you had to wait till the end of the month for your first paycheck, you wouldn't be waiting for a full 6 weeks. I'm fairly certain the government are looking at options around that. Policy and practice are certainly looking at options around that we hope that the government will consider. But fundamentally, they do all cost money, and I think that's one of the things that's driving elements of this debate. The other thing you have to remember, there is an important policy point here behind that weight, which is under the current benefit system, when people move into work, they can face these exact same problems. So universal credit as a policy idea was originally conceived to be something designed for the majority of people on low incomes who can budget, who can cope with a monthly payment. And the idea was that there would be support available for people that can't.
But are you confident there's not a more fundamental problem there? You may have heard me mentioning to Andy Burnham there when he was Health Secretary and before, that government's attempts to bring a unified IT system into the National Health Service, and billions upon billions being wasted. It failed in the end there. Is there something, because you said how complicated all this is there something more fundamental going on?
I think back in 2013, when universal credit was first being implemented, there were definitely huge issues around the IT, and that's one of the reasons, and we've heard about all of that in the intervening years. What you've got now with universal credit full service is, I think, a system that is fundamentally more sound and more secure, as far as we hear, but there are clearly a whole range of administrative challenges and issues. So the organisations we work with point out the challenges they have in helping their residents to verify or make a universal credit claim or fundamentally get involved. I think if those organisations that do want to help the department and make universal credit a success could play a bigger role in that, that could have a really powerful impact on how universal credit is both perceived and the impact it has on people receiving it.
So we're out of time. It's really interesting to get your thoughts, but your first message to the Chancellor is put some more money into it.
I think that is the first message.
As you designed it.
Yeah.
OK, Mr Ghelani, very good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Now then, international affairs, and with the Islamic State